50,000 years before the first pharmacy existed, something in Neanderthal remains suggests they already knew which plants could change the way the mind works. Long before agriculture, before writing, before anything resembling organized religion, humans were already reaching for substances that altered perception, and doing it deliberately, repeatedly, and with enough consistency that traces of it survive in teeth, hair, and ritual objects buried for thousands of years. This isn't a story about recreational drug use. It's a story about how altered states of consciousness may have shaped the earliest human spirituality, art, and social structure long before any of those words existed. The nascent field of archaeochemistry has convincingly demonstrated Neanderthal use of psychoactive plants like yarrow and chamomile going back 50,000 years. That number alone reframes the whole conversation. This predates modern Homo sapiens' dominance of Europe, predates cave painting as we usually date it, predates almost every marker of behavioral complexity researchers typically point to when discussing the origins of human consciousness. Anthropologist Scott M. Fitzpatrick has suggested that early hunter-gatherers of our own species likely encountered, consumed, and experimented with a wide array of plants and fungi, following the same instinct their Neanderthal cousins already had. Whatever drove this behavior wasn't unique to one species or one region. It ran through multiple branches of the human family tree, independently, deep in prehistory. The person who has done more than almost anyone to formalize this research is Elisa Guerra-Doce, a prehistorian at the University of Valladolid in Spain. Her landmark study, published in the journal Time and Mind, examined decades of archaeological evidence to assess how prevalent psychoactive substance use and altered state practices actually were across prehistoric societies. She built her case on 4 categories of physical evidence: fossilized leaves, seeds, fruits, or wood from psychoactive plants, psychoactive alkaloids detected directly in ancient dwellings, artifacts, and human remains, and artistic depictions of drinking scenes or mood-altering plants clearly inspired by altered states of consciousness. That's not speculation built on guesswork. That's chemistry, residue analysis, and direct physical remains, cross-referenced against art that depicts the experience itself. The specific finds read like a tour through nearly every inhabited continent. Archaeologists have found remnants of opium poppy lodged in the teeth of an adult male at a Neolithic site in Spain, charred cannabis seeds inside bowls recovered in Romania, and traces of barley beer coating ceramic vessels across the Iberian Peninsula. In the Italian Alps, abstract rock art depicts what researchers interpret as the ritual use of hallucinogenic mushrooms. People chewed mildly stimulating beetle leaves in Asia as far back as 13,000 BC and used hallucinogens derived from the San Pedro cactus in South America for thousands of years. Different continents, different plants, different eras, and yet the same underlying behavior kept surfacing independently. Humans finding a plant that shifts consciousness and building it into ritual life rather than treating it as an isolated curiosity. The deliberate, structured nature of this use is the detail that separates it entirely from simple recreational experimentation. Guerra-Doce found that these substances turned up overwhelmingly in tombs and ceremonial spaces rather than ordinary living quarters, which led her to conclude that unlike much of modern society, prehistoric Europeans didn't use mind-altering substances purely for pleasure. Instead, the use of alcohol and plant drugs like opium poppies and hallucinogenic mushrooms was highly regulated and closely tied to the belief systems and sacred burial rites of many pre-industrial societies. She argues their use functioned as an integral part of prehistoric belief itself, treated as a tool believed to aid direct communication with the spiritual world. This wasn't indulgence, it was infrastructure, built directly into how these societies understood death, the divine, and the boundary between this world and whatever they believed existed beyond it. A 2023 discovery in Menorca pushed the physical evidence even further, straight into the strands of actual human hair. Researchers analyzed ritually buried hair recovered from a site called S-Crits using ultra-high-performance liquid chromatography and high-resolution mass spectrometry. The analysis revealed the presence of the alkaloids atropine, scopolamine, and ephedrine, compounds known for producing altered perception and vivid hallucinations, dating back roughly 3,000 years. Hair holds a chemical record of what passed through a person's bloodstream over the final months of their life, which which means this evidence isn't ambiguous residue sitting in a shared communal bowl. It's a direct biological signature tied to a specific individual, confirming they had consumed these compounds repeatedly before their ritual burial. Gera Dose believes even older, more direct proof of human hallucinogen use will surface as this kind of chemical analysis keeps advancing across new archaeological sites, stating flatly, there is no doubt. The Americas hold their own version of this story, arguably even richer and more chemically complex. A small ritual pouch stitched from 3 fox snouts, discovered in a rock shelter in southwestern Bolivia, and dated to roughly 1,000 years ago, likely belonged to a shaman. When researchers tested residue inside the pouch against a range of known plant compounds, they found traces of bufotenine, cocaine, dimethyltryptamine, harmine, and possibly psilocin, the active compound in psychedelic mushrooms. That combination is especially striking because harmine and DMT are the 2 primary active ingredients in ayahuasca, meaning this single pouch may represent the earliest known physical evidence of an ayahuasca-like preparation anywhere in the archaeological record. Researchers also concluded that the plants used to fill this pouch came from ecologically distant and disparate regions of South America, evidence that a genuinely sophisticated botanical knowledge network moved these substances across serious distances well before any written record could have preserved that trade route. Someone 1,000 years ago understood which specific plants from far-flung regions needed combining to produce a specific altered state, and had the trade connections to actually gather them all in one place. Peru offers a particularly striking case of how these substances intersected directly with political power. Researchers studying the ancient Chavan civilization in the Peruvian Andes found evidence that psychoactive drugs were used during exclusive, likely secret rituals, gatherings that may have helped establish the social and political hierarchies that shaped the wider region for centuries afterward. Archaeologists uncovered a hidden network of rooms called galleries, built into the stone temple complex at Chavandarantar. Inside, they recovered 23 artifacts believed to be drug paraphernalia, mostly tubes crafted from bird bones designed for inhaling substances directly. Chemical testing on these tubes confirmed traces of dimethyltryptamine, a powerful psychedelic compound that occurs naturally across a wide range of plants and produces intense, short-lived visual hallucinations. Anthropologist Daniel Contreras, who co-authored the research, concluded this drug use formed part of a tightly controlled ritual, deliberately reserved for a select few, functioning specifically to reinforce and legitimize the existing social hierarchy. Altered consciousness wasn't just a spiritual tool here. It became a mechanism for controlling who held power, restricted to elites who could then claim direct, exclusive access to whatever the rest of the community believed lay beyond ordinary perception. China's record reaches back through its own oldest medical texts. The Pen Sao Qing, considered China's oldest pharmacopoeia, explicitly states that cannabis makes one communicate with spirits. The strongest physical evidence supporting that ancient claim emerged in 2019, when researchers detected multiple cannabinoids preserved inside wooden braziers recovered from the Jirzankal cemetery in Central Asia, confirming that cannabis use in ritual contexts wasn't just a passage written down centuries after the fact, but a documented, physically verifiable practice tied to actual burial sites. A separate 2020 study analyzing charred residue from the Judahite shrine at Tel Arad, a scaled-down version of Solomon's Temple dated to the 8th century BC, revealed several cannabinoids alongside frankincense, suggesting a deliberately engineered psychotropic incense used inside one of the ancient world's most significant religious structures. Put all of this evidence side by side, spanning Neanderthal use of everyday plants 50,000 years ago through Bronze Age Mediterranean rituals, Andean political ceremony, and ancient Chinese medical texts, and a single pattern holds firm across every single culture examined. Evidence of ritual hallucinogen use turns up in ancient cave art, in residues recovered from shrines, and in shell cups used across dramatically different eras and regions. Psychedelics appear almost inseparable from the broader religious heritage of humankind as a whole. Even in Mesoamerica, mushroom stones used in ritual contexts date back to 3000 BC, and archaeological evidence of peyote use stretches back more than 5,000 years, confirming this wasn't a pattern confined to the old world alone. It reached every continent continent humans settled, independently, again and again. Step back, and the implication runs deeper than simple drug history. As one researcher put it plainly, we may never know precisely when or where humans first discovered the mind-altering power of these plants, but it's fair to say our relationship with them is incalculably old, globally pervasive, and rich with meaning. Every major religious tradition alive today carries echoes of temples, incense, and ceremonies built to alter perception in some form. That instinct didn't begin with any named religion, any written scripture, or any city. It began somewhere in deep prehistory, when a person first ate the wrong mushroom, chewed the wrong leaf, or breathed in smoke from the wrong plant, and experienced something so overwhelming that an entire belief system eventually grew up around trying to reach that state again, deliberately, and pass the knowledge of how to do it safely down through countless